January 22nd, 1879. A few hours earlier, over 1,000 British soldiers were wiped out at Isandlwana, the worst defeat in the history of the British Empire. Now, 4,000 Zulu warriors are marching on a tiny mission station, defending it, fewer than 150 men. There is no wall around them. There is no line of retreat. There is only the night ahead. This is the story of the most decorated single action in British military history. This is Rorke's Drift. That morning, 20,000 Zulu warriors had overrun a British camp at Isandlwana. It happened in under 2 hours. A handful of survivors escaped, riding desperately to warn anyone left in the Zulu army's path. 11 miles away sat a small supply depot and makeshift hospital, barely defended, barely armed. In command were 2 junior officers no one expected to lead a battle. Lieutenant John Chard, an engineer, Lieutenant Gonville Bromhead, a man his own superiors considered unremarkable. When word of Isandlwana reached them, the order was simple: abandon the post and run. But inside the station lay dozens of sick and wounded men who could not run, men who could not be left behind. Chard and Bromhead made a decision that would define the rest of their lives. They would stay, they would fight. In under 2 hours, using nothing but grain sacks and biscuit tins, they turned a mission station into a fortress. Then they waited, 150 men, many of them sick, facing an army that had just annihilated a force 8 times their size. At 4:30 in the afternoon, the horizon began to move. 4,000 Zulu warriors came forward at a dead run, the same regiments that had broken the British line that morning. Behind the barricade, the defenders held their fire until the last possible second. Then Chard gave the order. A single volley tore into the front ranks. The charge staggered, but it did not stop. Warriors reached the barricade itself, grabbing at rifles, pulling men over the wall. The fighting became hand-to-hand. Twice the line bent, twice it held. The defenders fought with bayonets, rifle butts, whatever they had left. As dusk fell, the first assault finally broke. But it was only the beginning. The Zulu commanders had noticed something. The hospital sat at the weakest point of the entire perimeter. The next assault would not aim at the wall. It would aim at the wounded. Inside, a handful of soldiers stood between dozens of helpless patients and an army trying to break down the door. There was nowhere to fall back to. If the hospital fell, everyone inside it would die. Unable to break the door, the Zulu warriors set the thatched roof alight. Private Henry Hook and a handful of others made a desperate choice. They smashed holes through the interior walls, room by room, and pulled the wounded through the openings, fighting a rearguard action as the fire spread behind them. Every doorway had to be held long enough for the next man to be carried out. Somehow, almost every patient in that building was pulled out alive before the roof came down. The defenders fell back to a final, shrinking perimeter, a wall of biscuit boxes barely chest high, and still, the attacks kept coming, wave after wave, out of the dark, lit only by the fire they themselves had started. Ammunition was running low. Every round had to count. Midnight came. The attacks did not stop. 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, still they came. The defenders were exhausted past the point most men could function, and still, they held the line. No one behind that wall knew if morning would come at all. Assault after assault broke against that shrinking perimeter through the small hours of the night. Some men fought with empty muskets as clubs. Others fought with bayonets alone, out of ammunition entirely. Every time the line bent, it did not break. Every time a man fell, another closed the gap. Lieutenant Chard moved along the line through the worst of it, holding the defense together by sheer will alone. Sometime after 4 in the morning, the assaults began to slow. The Zulu regiments had been marching and fighting for nearly 2 full days. As the sky began to lighten, the attacks finally stopped. At dawn, the defenders watched in silence as the Zulu army withdrew over the same ridge they had come from. The siege was over. Fewer than 150 men had held for over 10 hours against thousands. Around the perimeter lay hundreds of Zulu dead. Inside it, 17 defenders had been killed. For their actions that night, 11 men were awarded the Victoria Cross, more than for any single action in British military history, before or since. Chard and Bromhead, the 2 officers no one expected to command, were suddenly the most famous soldiers in the British Empire. The victory came on the very same day the Empire learned of its worst defeat. For a shaken public back home, Rorke's Drift became the story that mattered. Today, a monument stands on that same patch of ground in South Africa, marking where a mission station briefly became one of the most fought-over places on Earth. The regiment that held that line lives on. 150 men were never meant to survive that night. They were expected to run. They chose not to. They had every reason to leave. They stayed anyway, and because they did, a name that should have been forgotten became impossible to forget. This has been the story of Rorke's Drift.